Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This video was shot back in the last quarter of 2017 and the idea is to bring you guys up to date with this particular project. So it's a little wordy, so bear with us, but we hope you could enjoy it. And moving forward from here, the updates will obviously be a lot more three-dimensional, if you like, and there'll be a lot more going on. But this will bring you bang up to date with where we've got to so far with this particular project for a customer. So we hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to the usual like, subscribe, comment below, and enjoy this episode. YouTube, Nathan here again from Auto Upgrades with Danny. You may recognise the hub. Obviously we're sitting in today. It's a slightly different approach to our usual videos because we are talking about a project, and it's a project that happens to be one of my old cars. I owned it for 11 years in total. So Nissan Skyline R33 Gtr happened to be my poster car, if you like, when I was a kid growing up, and I saw a midnight purple one running around our local town. Was just awestruck with this vehicle. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen, and the way it went was. So yeah, that was about 12 years ago now, maybe 12 and a bit years ago, and that particular car, I got fresh off the boat, and it came with basic mods like a lot of the Jap stuff does. It was a little bit banged up. I think I've got a picture somewhere here. Hopefully that's worked. So that picture gives you an idea what it looked like originally. And then that came with an air filter and exhaust, probably running around 320, 330 brakes, something like that.
When you picked up the Skyline, what was the actual plans for it for the long run?
Well, when I originally picked it up, it was quite a jump from what I'd previously driven. I'd owned quite a few cars at that point, but most of the stuff had been French, and yeah, as anyone knows that dealt with French cars of a certain age, they tend to be quite a pain in the arse to own.
But your first car was a 106.
My first car was a 106, yeah, a P-Reg 106 1.1, which didn't stay like that for long. I won't bore everyone with all the details now, maybe that for another time. However, what it did end up like was, well, what my mum used to affectionately refer to it as the Dino Rod emergency response vehicle, and this is why. So here's a picture of that car. That started off as a 1.1 Peugeot 106 and ended up with throttle bodies, nitrous, dimmer kit, full roll cage. Used to set every single car alarm off in the street as it drove past, and even for testing and purposes and things like that, we went to Santa Pod. We wore ear defenders because it was just giving everyone such a headache. A lot of fun, but very different. And I went from that, which had around 200 horsepower, shall we say, very light, very quick car in fairness, but I went from that to an R33 GTR. So it's a big step up. And after literally 2 minutes of owning it, I raced Cerbera, and we were going down the dual carriageway, and I remember I had a friend with me as well, and yeah, I basically was whipping the TVR, but as we came into the roundabout, decided that I wanted to get on the power a little bit too early, and ended up doing a nice 360 down the middle of the dual carriageway at quite a great speed, which was very funny to the TVR driver as well. But he stopped, let me go, and off I went again. But anyway.
So what mods did you have planned for the R33?
Well, in all fairness, around that time, that felt like quite a lot of power. I did have plans to do more. I knew a little bit about them. I've been doing my research, but it was my first kind of like foray into Japanese tuning. You know, so I'd done a bit of French tuning obviously before that, but that was, like I say, many years ago. And there was a lot more easily extractable power from the Japanese stuff. Very simple bolt-on stuff would give you decent gains. So then, over a period of time, I completely restored the car. Did all the body work, because originally it was black, as you saw in the first picture. But we did a complete restoration on it, and here's a couple of shots of while we were doing it. So glass out, full on repaint, made everything straight. Had a few dings and dents here and there. and slowly started upping the power as well, to ultimately we dropped the engine out, did more work on the engine, and had it up to 650 horsepower, which is quite a decent decent power level for those cars. Makes it a good fast road car. I did drag racing in it. There's a decent shot here, that's sort of up at Santa Pod. We did loads of track days in it, Snetterton, Brands Hatch, further afield like Nürburgring, obviously Nürburgring, and Spa-Francorchamps as well. That was quite a regular haunt for us. We used to enjoy going there with it. I decided that I wanted to make it feel a bit more, dare I say it, German. I wanted it to be a little bit better at sound deadening, so we filled the car with sound deadening. We put a nice interior, a bit of a plush interior, did a custom dash for it, which you can see here, and ended up with what I thought was a nice rounded car. But at that point I was kind of getting bored of it a little bit, so I decided to move on and put it up for sale. And I was lucky enough that one of my customers actually came in and offered me more money than I was going to sell it for, so I couldn't really refuse the offer. And yeah, that was the end of my ownership of it.
But then once you sold the car, that wasn't the end of the car, because he's come back for more work and for quite a decent build. Yeah, and we had very, very long discussions about all of the options. At various times when we'd been to shows and stuff, we were hanging about at shows and people looking at the car, and we'd chat away about, potentially what we could do with it. We ended up with something quite different, and as far as we're concerned, we think possibly unique.
This definitely isn't an RB engine, and for all those who don't know what this is, what is it?
Well, this is General Motors all aluminium 6.2 litre LS3
V8.
This is an off-the-shelf engine you can buy, and standard from the factory you're looking at around 430 horsepower at 5900 RPM and 424 odd foot-pound of torque at 4600 RPM. That is the base unit. It's a brand new crate engine, as they say, crate because it comes in a crate and it's all ready to be bolted into a car. And the only thing we've changed on it so far, because we do plan on doing some more mods to it over time, but for the moment, to get it to fit, and this will all become clear later on, is it's got a Corvette sump on it. And the reason for that will become clear, like I say, later on.
Okay, so what's the transmission on it?
So this is mated to a Tremec T56 Magnum. It's basically a 6-speed manual. I won't bore you with the gear ratios, things like that, but again, it's an excellent aftermarket gearbox. It'll be bolted up to all sorts of different things. Obviously you can see the bell housing, so it fits up to our LS3. The reason we went with this particular option as well is it is pretty much the strongest gearbox you can get from Tremec, and it's supposedly good for 700 foot-pound of torque.
Okay.
So it's got an excellent torque rating on it, because we do plan on going quite a long way with this car over a period of time. So this is the 33 GTR in question.
So did the engine fit straight in, or was there much work involved?
Well, believe it or not, it's almost like the LS3 V8 was designed to go in this engine bay. It fits, it's snug, but it fits nicely. And we've done extensive work to the subframe to sit it as low as possible and as far back as possible, whilst keeping 100% serviceability. So you could easily fit a hand around the bell housing, for example, if you want to remove the gearbox. The engine sits nice and low and a long way back, but you can still get a finger down the back of the inlet manifold when it's all built up.
Okay, so for the GTR purists who are screaming at the screen right now, why have you cut up a GTR?
Well, we haven't. That's the beautiful part about this, is that the last thing I wanted to do was to cut up a GTR. There's been lots of LS swapped GTSTs out there because it makes a lot more financial sense. So a lot of people are saying, why do it to a GTR? Well, that's what the customer wanted, so that's what we're going to do. But ultimately, from my point of view, as a bit of a JDM purist myself, the last thing we wanted to be doing was cutting up the firewall and smashing hammers into things to make things fit. Right, for those that want to know, there were 3 cuts made to this car. That's it. 2 of them are here, which was literally to give us better access, because the engine has obviously come in and out numerous times, and anyone who does this kind of work will realise that why we've done that, and that can just be welded back up with absolutely zero problem. It's non-structural as well. And the second one is a very small semicircular cut we've made around the gear stick, and that is purely because the Tremec 6-speed sits probably 1.5 inches further forwards than the original gear stick. And like I say, through extensive subframe work and being able to mount the steering. The biggest one was really the steering. I mean, we'll come on to that in a minute, but that was the biggest ball ache out of the whole job so far, was to get the steering sorted. But there was a few things along the way. The car kind of has helped us along the way, if that makes sense, but that'll all become clear in a minute. But she's talking to us, telling us that she's okay with it.
Okay, so we have the subframe over here.
Okay, so those of you who know what they're looking at with the subframe on the GTR will notice what's missing, which is mostly around this area. What we have here is steering rack mounts. Now we went with an M3 rack, which is just here. Well, that's a purple tag rack. We've got experience with them. We know they're good, and it will work well with the setup we're going for. We have got to do a few adjustments to that to lengthen one side, but that's not a problem. And as you can see here is where the extensive part of the subframe work went in. So these are our engine mounts, which in this instance we're using Vibratechnic engine mounts, which are their universal LS ones, effectively, which sit in the frame like so. We also have reinforcement to clear the sump. This actually is part of an old roll cage we cut out of another project car. So a bit of T45 there. And as you can see, everything else is boxed and fillet. This is double seamed. The subframe has been reinforced as well, just to make everything extra strong. A little bit more detail work you guys can see here. This is notched for steering purposes, but also, as you can see here, this is going to potentially, this gives us more clearance for the steering rack, and again it's all boxed in all the way around to the other side. We'll have a look on the other side as well. So we've definitely got no issues with strength or rigidity. We're really pleased with the way it's turned out, to be honest. In a future video you'll see the engine sat on the frame obviously, but this is now going to go out for powder coating, shot blasting and powder coating, which brings me on to the gearbox mount. So this was fabricated from scratch. If you can see this, but you might be wondering why it looks so odd. And the reason for this is that we're actually utilising the original body pickup points for the gearbox. So again, it's another reason that we haven't had to chop or cut or weld any extra plating in for the gearbox to be mounted. So this, with a couple of bobbins which sit on here, we've effectively been able to mount the Tremec in exactly the same position as the old GTR gearbox was mounted.
And as you said earlier, all this can be reversed, so the engine can go back to being an RB engine.
100%, 100%. With these vehicles going up, you know, the values of these are going north really quickly at the moment. I'm sure they're going to plateau a bit shortly, but you know, in terms of the value of the car, when I sold it, it's probably, as it stood, it's probably worth 3 or 4 grand more today than it was just a year ago. However, what we can do at some stage, if the customer decides to do it, is effectively with a new subframe, a new steering rack, a new steering column, and a couple of other little odds and sods, we can actually reverse this completely.
So this is the steering rack. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, this is the M3 purple tag rack, and people who know, like the drift guys and all the rest of it, will know the purple tag rack. It's basically what we call a quick rack, so less turns effectively to get full lock out of the vehicle. So it just makes it more responsive on the road. But we also use this because of dimension purposes. We had one of our guys, Tommy, he's got a diesel M Sport car which has this rack in it. So it was good for us to, before we bought this, to mock up off his. We just thought we'd try it one day. So we threw his car on the ramp, had a look at it, did our measurements, and found that just with a very small spacer, we'd actually be able to make this work pretty well. Okay guys, that was the Skyline V8 project. We hope you enjoyed watching. We'll be doing regular updates on this car. We've got lots of other cool stuff happening, so please leave us a comment. We'll get back to all of you guys as quick as we can. Leave us a like. I like it a lot. Don't forget to subscribe, and most importantly, don't forget to hit that bell button.